So we're going to be working on this 1988 WB. Beautiful. It's gorgeous paint. I don't know if it was stored inside or if it's got repainted. You can see the reflection on it. Anyhow, so this has been having some intermittent DDEC issues. We have some fans in here cooling it off. It's driven here. So this here is the engine computer, the EDU they call it on a DDEC 1, so you can identify it by these big connectors. And also so this is an electronic distributor unit, and then there's a computer inside in the closet as well. So there's two computers on these DDEC 1s. When you go to DDEC 2, it's just one computer. So we're trying to cool this off so we can get in here and start testing. We're going to probably be pulling those connectors off and doing some tests here. So this is the interior. If you can hear me, we got the air running. It's summertime. Quick little tour inside here. We're going to be going back here in the closet. I got my laptop set up with the DDEC 1 troubleshooting guide. We'll be showing some of that. We're going back here in the back closet is where we got to be. So, alright, so we got some lights set up. We're going to be down here in the bottom of this closet. That little box right there, you see they got little screws hidden. Back here. Screw there, and there's probably a couple down at the bottom down there, but I don't know yet. Most likely. So we'll get those screws and get this thing taken out of here. So that's what we're looking for right there. This is the other computer for the DDEC 1 system. And then down below, put the light down here, there's a relay and some circuit breakers. So, and a terminal strip, we need to check all this stuff. So my theory is that this engine, we're not getting correct power back to that EDU unit on the engine, and I think it's derating the engine because it's not getting the correct power. So we're going to start doing some testing and see if we can figure out something. So I'm messing with this Canon plug and I'm just checking these connectors, and this one socket came out and it's not locking in. You can see here, I push it in and then you can just pull it right back out. So that means when the pin tries to go in there, it could push it back and not make a good connection. So I'm going to try to move it, but I don't have a tool for this, so I made a little soda can tube kind of to slide in to release these connectors. So I'm going to try to move the pin to a different socket hole. Alright, so on these DDEC 1 buses, it's always good, there's breakers here. So these breakers feed, I believe one feeds this guy, and then there's two feeds actually for the back. I'm not sure what the fourth one is for. Maybe that relay, I'm not sure. But it appears that these are also resistors to make different voltages. So what I'm doing here is I've got my ground on this pin on this, because there's no ground back here. This metal is not grounded, so I'm using the pin on that relay right there as a ground. So then you can come here and check voltage. So there I'm at 13.58. I'm going to check on each of these nuts. So these are circuit breakers, resetting circuit breakers. So I want to see that same voltage. I don't want to see any voltage drop across there. Whoops. Maybe I'm doing this left-handed, so it's a little hard. And then, like I said, these guys looks like it's, I don't know, this one's 2.5 volts. Bro, it's only when you have the ignition on, apparently. So this must feed from this little relay, because when you turn the ignition on, this relay closes and sends power, I think up here maybe to this little block, and makes 5 volts. So I'm not sure if that's sending the 5 volts to that computer. I'd have to look at the wiring diagram, but so those are some simple checks. Like I said, the other thing to do is a voltage drop check. So let me get this guy out of there. All right, so voltage drop check is you go from the source here to the item. So, and it should read 0. You want as close as possible to 0. So a real good multimeter, see that goes down to milliamps. So we're going to check each of these, which we looked at that with the voltage. It tells us the same thing. This just confirms it. So we're at 0 volts. That means these breakers are good. They're not dropping any voltage across there. If you're seeing more than, you know, I mean, if you're seeing amps, you know, anything in that, you know, before the decimal point, you got way too much. I mean, a half amp even is too much, because you're talking about 12 volts. So it's going to be, you know, a half a volt. I'm sorry, not amps. I'm talking amps and volts. You should see, you know, less than a half a volt, if that, you know. I'd rather see stuff in this 3rd and 4th column, you know, if anything, you know. Let's see if we go over here. Well, that's reading voltage now. Yeah. But anyhow, yeah. So that's a voltage drop check. Like I said, it's always good to do that. That'll tell you if you have a high resistance connection. It's a screw from something. From this panel. Alright, hope you can hear me over the air conditioners, but it's Florida and it's hot, so we got air ACs running. So when this bus was brought to me today, the check engine light was on. These are the check engine lights here. It's the check engine light. That's stopping, and I tell you, shut it down. The high idle wouldn't work, and so we're going to just double check after we did some of the work back there and see what happens. So those lights should come on momentarily when you start it. This thing has another issue with the voltage we got to figure out. So it looks like the check engine light went out. We're hearing a squealing in the back. We got to figure what that is. All right, so this is the 6-pin power connector for the EDU, the engine distribution unit. So if you can see on here, these are labeled with the letters. So A and B is the ground, C and D and E and F are the 2 power feeds. So it splits it up into those 2. So you can take your meter on this side. So this bottom 2 are A and B, that's the ground. And then get the meter up here where it can be seen in the video. So then we'll just go down through here and check the voltages. So there we got 14 volts, 14 volts, 14 volts, 14 volts. And then change to the other ground just to make sure you both have good grounds. 14 volts, 14 volts, 14 volts, 14 volts. So we're getting good power here. I think we solved the issue inside at that Canon plug. So the only thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to tie this cabling up a little better. Actually, I think I'm going to run this behind this thing. It kind of stays off of this head and doesn't get, cabling doesn't get worn. So I'm hoping that was our issue. We're probably take it out for a test drive and see how it does, and we'll go from there. So just so you know, this is the 6-pin power connector, and then you have J1 and J2. J1 is gray and J2 is black. They're painted over, so you may have to scrape some paint off of them to see it, but the J1 on the top is gray and the J2 on the bottom is black. So those are the connectors, and you'll see in the troubleshooting guide. So here's the troubleshooting guide. So this shows you that 6-pin power connector that we just tested. It shows you the pin out of where the power is, and then these are the J connectors that go to the computer. So now if we had further issues and we thought we weren't getting power to the computer, you can see the numbers on these J connectors, and we could test the power right on a J connector to the computer to make sure we're getting the power there. So it's the same thing. So it comes from that 6-pin connector, then goes to the J1 connector. So J1 connector, J2 connector. So they show you all the pin outs of those. So this feeds all the injectors with power. So if you start having multiple injector codes and issues with injectors, it's because you're probably losing power from this J1 connector, or from your power feed. And I think that was what was happening inside that closet in the bedroom, that we were losing power through that Canon plug to feed this power to the EDU. So I'm hoping that cures the issue. So this thing is having issues starting. These are new batteries, 23, but I think what the issue is they tried to keep it from corroding by putting these little thingies on, and I think they're blocking the connection. So I don't think these are making a good connection. So I'm hoping that it's the case, because when you try to start it, it drops down to like 7 or 8 volts. So we're going to try to reconnect all these where I'm pulling these boots back, and hopefully that'll solve this starting issue. This connector's we'll just kind of pull these back over the top like that. So I'm going to do that, go around. Looks like I got to do that to all these. Looks like they put them underneath all these. It's a good idea to keep corrosion at bay, but you can see a lot of that surface area is sitting on that, so it's not making a good contact with the metal. So I'm hoping that's probably the issue. We'll see. It's that easy, we're doing good. So we'll continue around, get all these done, and we'll come back and see what it does when we go to start. Cut. So we got, this is the actuator, the linear actuator for the generator bay. Quit going out. So I found out that, so there's a clutch dog, this little plate here, see it lines up with that, and that turns the thing, and then, you know, when it gets to the end, it allows it to slip. Well, that's glued into this gear right here, and it had melted and it came loose from that gear, so it was just spinning. So we're going to use some hot glue and glue these back together and see how that works. So I hot glued that gear back on there, or that little thing on there, and then we're putting this back together. So you got a circlip on here that you got to get on. In order to get that on, you got to compress. There's a spring-loaded cog in there. That's what that allows that thing to when it gets to the end, you know. So I use these two clamps to clamp that spring so I could get the little circlip on there. So then we'll reassemble this. Taking this thing out of that. So this thing has this housing here. So this gear goes on in between the two gears. That drives from the motor to there. You've got this cover on the outside. Gasket, keep the grease in, sort of. And this cover on the back. Alright. Snugger. Alright, then this goes on the end of this tube. So there's a hole there, and that matches up to this guy. Oh, we might have to spin that thing to line up the gears. There it is. Yeah, we're spinning now, so that's on there. So then you line up that hole and run this bolt in. Alright, so we got this working. That noise is normal. That means the clutch is working. That grinding kind of sound. So it should kind of make that noise. I mean, obviously, don't run it on that too long. Pretty well. There we go. You want to know where that controls are for that? They're right here in the side. The remote generator start.